In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, overlooking the can of worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. I am so glad you have joined us here today. We have a returning special guest. It's been much too long. I'm so glad to have you back. It's Cousin Joey, fresh out of his garage. What were you working on today? You were in the garage working on a car, huh?
We did a purge valve on the old Ford Focus, my wife's car. How are you?
I'm just thrilled. I'm so glad to have you here because I printed out a stack of car articles, and I don't want to do these by myself. I'd rather have you here talking to me about them.
Okay. Let me hear the articles. Baby.
But tell me what you were saying about the hoses in your car. That was interesting.
So the new cars have solid plastic hoses, and they're bent to a certain place, and you really can't put a lot of pressure on those. And so one assembly, I had to replace the purge valve, and one assembly was $146. That came with 6 different bent, perfectly hoses. I get it. This is what we have to do, but I was not pleased. I just wanted to replace the purge valve.
All right, let me ask you something here. So obviously the rubber hoses are better. They're more malleable, right? Can you replace those factory hard pipes with real hoses when you repair something?
Yeah, you can. You need a heat gun. You need to have the wherewithal to be able to heat that pipe up in the right way so that's usable again. It's just definitely not something that the shade tree mechanic would want to tackle.
Well said.
That's my 2 cents.
Wow, that's crazy. Everything is designed for ease in manufacturing and not ease in repair. And as you know, that's a big thing with me. All right, so Cousin Joey, I'm so glad you're here. And you ready for some articles?
Let's do it.
All right, so this one, we're catching up. We're almost to the end of 2021 in the briefcase here. And I discovered this week as I was printing out articles, I said to myself, look, I got about 500 articles I'm behind on. So if I read or delete 10 articles a week, then we'll get caught up in about a year. So let's see if we can do that, folks, over the next year. We'll see if we can get ourselves caught up in this soup of articles. All right, so this one, AutoWeek.com, October 2021, Tesla says a CCS adapter for U.S. owners is on the way. Connector standard consolidation has been moving in the direction of CCS, with Tesla having switched to that standard in Europe. The automaker appears to be reconsidering the case for the supercharger network's continued exclusivity, with Elon Musk promising to open Tesla's network to other brands of EVs later in 2021. And I get it, folks, you're laughing here because this is old news, but I'm using this as an example to explain something, so bear with me. Tesla has used its own proprietary connector as a selling point for much of its existence, but of course, and it continues to be a purchase factor for Tesla buyers. But as the number
do they have a standardized plug-and-play type of system?
They do. It's a proprietary standard. All right, just like what Apple does constantly with everything they do, there's an ultra proprietary standard.
Right, that could be duplicated. Okay.
Right, you can't duplicate, like that lightning connector on last week's iPhone, right? It was an Apple only connector. So you go to Big Lots or you go to the drugstore, you can buy a USB adapter for your charger for your phone for $1, and then the Apple Lightning one is $10 to $20 because of all their licensing fees. Right, and the idea with Tesla is, hey, only Tesla owners with the Tesla connector are allowed to use the Tesla supercharger network. Well, that's how it was. Until
themselves.
What's that?
They're trying to cover themselves.
Well, they're trying to make it not just, hey, we're going to compete on merit and we have a better car and buy our car because it's better. They are trying to make it so that it's, here's the car, but also you get the experience. Right, you get the experience of the Tesla supercharger network. And look, in Tesla's case, in the case of EVs, it makes sense because it was a very chicken and egg thing, right? You couldn't get an EV unless you had a charger network set up in the country, right? So that was the right way to do it. But in Apple's case, they just keep doing it because they want people to have the experience, and you have to have Apple socks and Apple underwear. All right, so
wait, Tesla wants to rent out your car while you're at work.
We'll talk about that absolutely after this article. I definitely want you to talk about that because that's a... Yep. Yeah, that's huge. So, as the number of non-Tesla EVs has grown, there has been an expectation that the connector standards would eventually allow for interoperability, since Tesla owners could end up in a minority in the future and therefore a disadvantage. Okay, so the second type of adapter, one that would allow non-Teslas to use the Tesla supercharger network, could pose some technical hurdles of their own, as non-Tesla EVs might need software to permit them to talk to the supercharger software, and could be a process, right? And I just looked on Ford's website a few seconds ago, and they actually say something about, you don't need a software update, but it'll enhance your experience, right? So it'll process, it'll be a brand by brand basis. So what happened later on that year is Ford and GM ended up adopting the Tesla, what's called the NACS, the North American Charging System. So they ended up adopting that. I remember that. And the other side of that is there are third-party stations like Charge America and Charge Point and that sort of thing. So those are growing and have been growing since then, okay? So here's the crazy part that I just want to put out there, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. Look, with gasoline, especially in older, simpler cars, right? It was a product. It was a natural thing that was made by the hands of God, and if you put a flame to it, it would burn and give you energy no matter where you were in the world. But now in this world of this metaverse, right, everything's the metaverse, now this digital world where everything is fabricated, everything is controlled, everything is handcrafted and artificial, right? So here we are in this artificial digital world where they just decide on a whim, hey, instead of having electricity on a standard connector, we're going to have a European connector and a North American connector, and certain brands will use a different connector. It's all just for electrons, right? But they all have to get greedy.
I love you. Let me interject. Here we go. There is a big market for adapters. Okay?
Of course.
Figure out what adapters go with what things, and you're going to make a killing. Just create an adapter. Second thing is, I don't feel...
But think about the chaos.
The Matrix.
But hang on.
It's not the Matrix. The fact that we have gasoline proves, almost to me, this is my only opinion, is that it's not a freaking Matrix. You need gasoline. Like gasoline engines and diesel engines, they're a pain in the man. You got to freaking talk to them and tweak them, and man, there's so many things you have to do to even make them work. They don't just exist. Like, I'm sorry, like, this is, maybe it's a half universe, man. Maybe it's like a half physical universe and a half spiritual universe, but I don't know, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying here. That's what I'm saying. Is we're not in the Matrix entirely. The point is, this whole digital world, they are trying to create a Matrix where they control everything. That's the whole point.
Of course. And everybody is going to have a little tiny, it's going to be a vertical TV screen, basically. It's going to be in their house, basically on the wall, and they're going to address the wall every morning, and they're going to be like, "Hi, I'm ready to serve," and the wall is going to be an AI. The wall is going to say, in a hologram form, "Hey, are you ready, citizen? Do you completely give your allegiance to the Federation this morning?" You know what I mean? And it's like, yep. If you can't go about your day unless you address that stupid wall.
Well,
you know what? I'm
it's
good on that.
Fahrenheit 451. That's where that's exactly, they predicted that, and
right.
It might be in your pocket, but it's the same concept. And if you listen to
Go be in your pocket, absolutely, sir. You got to adjust your phone every morning or the wall. You're absolutely right.
It's all the same concept. And go back a couple weeks in my podcast and listen to the episode with Monty LeBlanc, and we talk about how all of this stuff is set up to keep us divided, right? If you're a conservative, they'll play conservative shows. If you're liberal, liberal shows, whatever. It keeps us divided in our own completely personalized echo chamber.
It's beyond divided, sir. They want to change your entire existence. You don't have to anymore. They want you to become a android, basically.
Yeah.
They want you to merge with the fucking AI and all that. I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what they want, because now the technology's there to do it.
Just because it's there doesn't mean we should, as we always say. So tell me your update on Tesla, what you were talking about, because this is really fascinating. I actually test drove a Model Y and a Cybertruck this week with one of my best buddies, and we were talking about this concept. Go ahead.
All right, so here we go. So I'm going to propose a scenario to you. You're at work. You have a 9-hour job, right? You get there in the morning. You have 1 hour break. Your car sits in the parking lot for a full day, unused. So Tesla wants to say, let us rent your car for 4 hours, and we're going to do the Robotaxi. Now, here's what happens. God forbid something happens, like a knucklehead of a customer, and or something happens where the computer program doesn't work right, and there's an accident. I mean, who is responsible for the liability on that?
Yeah, that's a huge point. And honestly, Joey, we haven't even resolved that issue. All right, let's pretend that I'm not loaning my car to Tesla to act as a robotaxi throughout the day. And that's an incredibly brilliant idea, by the way. You know, my car's sitting in the office.
It's a great use.
Right, my car's sitting in the office parking lot all day. I might as well make some money and have someone utilize my car. I mean, that's brilliant, right? That's absolutely brilliant, especially in big cities with congestion. However, society hasn't even caught up with the idea of self-driving cars, okay? So forget about the idea of me monetizing my car and loaning it to Tesla for the day and yada yada, okay? What about the actual liability of full self-driving? In my personal and professional opinion, the software developers should personally be responsible if their car gets in an accident, because they are the ones who personally coded it.
That car was loaned out to X company, blah, blah, blah. That is on them. They need to figure that out. You should not be held liable.
Right. I don't even think it should be the company. I know, because people play the insurance game and whatever. Even if you have an employee who ruins something, the company still has to pay for it, and then all of us are punished by it, right? Yeah, so the point is, society has to figure out who's liable. I certainly hope they actually hold the actual perpetrators liable, these software developers liable, because they're the ones creating garbage software that destroys itself all the time. And if and only if they are held responsible, will we see some kind of improvement in the quality of software.
Well, they're gonna have to be held liable. You know, it's a thing.
Not necessarily, because you could just have everyone sue the company or whatever, or maybe not even the company, or sue people. Just everyone sues everyone all day long.
They're liable, sir. Absolutely.
Right. If they're held liable,
and that car does not have you as the occupant, you should not have to feel any sort of anything.
And honestly,
nope, sorry.
You know what might happen, actually, is a couple things. Number one, I think that regardless of cars, let's step back away from cars for a second. I think software companies themselves, like Microsoft and Apple, should start to be held liable for the utter garbage, the raging pile of garbage they're foisting on society, right? It's those end user license agreement, the EULA, that you click accept to. You don't understand that you're holding them harmless. So let's start with that. The other thing I'm predicting is, regardless of full self-driving, like my buddy and I, when we drove those Teslas a couple days ago, the Teslas also drove us, and we got to try the full self-driving, and it was incredible. I was very impressed. It was incredible. We typed in an address, and the car drove us there. It was absolutely astounding. It's very powerful. I'll give it that. It's just scary. And I think we'll just leave that alone, and let's say my prediction here is that Tesla will say, all right, when you're in Robotaxi mode, for the amount of time that your car is in Robotaxi mode, we'll hold the liability, no problem. I think that's how they'll solve that one.
It's the only thing that would work.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, you might know this, Tesla's doing in-house car insurance right now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it makes sense for them, because why should we have a third-party... I mean, I love third-party car dealerships and third-party car insurance because there's checks and balances, but in their case, they're doing Tesla in-house car insurance because if your Tesla gets hit, let's say you break a bumper, it's actually incredibly cheap for them to fix it because they're the ones producing the bumper. So instead of paying $1,000 for a bumper like you do in a normal situation, they're only paying $5 for a plastic bumper that they have on the shelf. Isn't that nuts?
So here's the thing, is that as an insurance appraiser, the cars can only be used OEM parts, and Tesla has somehow figured out the way to only have OEM parts used on their vehicles, and the insurance, they don't like it because it's just like such a kick in the butt with revenue.
Yeah, so you're saying if you have to fix a Tesla, let's say, in your daily job, are you able to get the parts for them?
Yeah, parts are only available through the Tesla dealership.
All right, but at least you're able to buy them.
There's no aftermarket support for Teslas.
Sure. And at least you're able to buy them, though, correct?
Correct.
Wow,
Correct.
That's a miracle. And it's look, as much as I'm a fan of Tesla, and they're astounding. However, I'm in full support of that guy in Massachusetts who says, look, I'm the first and only completely independent Tesla repair shop because we should have the right to repair our own gosh darn cars. All right, next article. This is carbuzz.com, and this is November 2021. BMW drops touchscreens and returns to the iDrive dark ages. Again, old article, but I'm going to explain why in a second. It was a temporary move because they weren't able to source touchscreens during the pandemic. Okay, fine. But the idea is they're saying touchscreens are better than trying to interact with a screen through a dial or a touchpad. Mercedes-Benz's old COMAND system was infuriating, where you had to say voice commands to the car, and that was the only way you were able to do anything. It was infuriating because almost all voice prompts to this day always misinterpret everything you say. And the silly mouse pad found in a Lexus comes exceptionally close to ruining the entire car. Sometimes cars, like I'm a huge fan of Lexus, and I would probably buy one because they are reliable. However, having a touchpad like that is just one of many examples where it's a fatal flaw, right? Have you seen, I'm sure you've seen this in cars, where it's like the whole thing is wonderful, but then there's some evil technology in there that's a fatal flaw. Something that causes you to say, never mind, I don't want this. So let's say Joey goes to buy a shirt and he really likes the shirt, but then it's got a rip in it or something. I'm talking about that. So if you wanted a Lexus, but then you found out you had to use a mouse pad in order to get through the menus, would you still buy that car?
Absolutely not.
There you go. So among all those different brands, I would prefer BMW's dial. Okay, they of course every year, like in 2011, I drove a 5 Series BMW, and it had a little dial in it. And that's cool because it's something that you can physically feel with your hand. You roll the dial, it clunk, clunk, clunk.
iDrive, right?
Yeah, so that's iDrive. So among all the different brands of fancy modern interfaces, BMW is the least bad. You know, you roll the thing with the iDrive and you do what you gotta do. Audi's another mess. So what happened was BMW actually invited me to something called the Ultimate Test Drive, where they allowed customers to test drive their cars and test drive their competitors' cars. And the Audi was such a piece of garbage. I was holding my hand, resting my hand on the shift knob, and it kept shifting downward, downshifting, because they didn't realize that most cars you have to strafe over to the left or the right to go into sport mode. They just, into manual mode. So that when you rested your hand on the shift knob, it would just randomly shift. All right, so last article, Joey. This is from AutoWeek.com, November 2021, and this is fascinating because it answers a question we've all been asking, which is, what happens when an EV runs out of juice on the side of the road? You can't bring it to, a lot of times they just tow it to a place and then charge it, but what if you're on the side of the road and you only need maybe 10 miles worth of charge to get home? I've done that before in a gas car. So, a couple times. More times than I'm willing to admit. So
that's very sad.
AutoWeek.com, November 2021. Check out this suitcase full of power from ZipCharge. Portable EV charger. ZipCharge Go is meant to solve the problem of curbside charging and extending an EV's range, as it can be brought along on a trip like a suitcase, or presumably held in your tow truck. Charger will feature connectivity. And it has over-the-air updates and time charging and tracking and geofencing. What? Geofencing is the most evil technology I know of, where it's just not allowed to work outside of a certain fence, outside of a certain area on the earth. So it's kind of like a can of gas that you can bring with you, right? That your tow truck driver brings you. Except it's electricity. So it's like a can of electricity that you take with you, and it's got those charging connectors. I'm sure there's 90 different connectors that we talked about that it'll have to have now. It'll have to have 80 adapters. And the tow truck driver or the first responder brings it to you if you're on the side of the road and you forgot to charge your car, or if your car battery dies randomly. And that's going to happen, folks. Notice how your laptops and your phones, as they get older, sometimes the battery just drops out for no reason. That's the sign of a dying battery. So guess what? This is going to happen all over the world pretty soon, where your car batteries are just going to die randomly. So it's a great idea. But, of course, they sprinkled these evil cloud update things all over it in order to make it worse. You know what I really like? For the normal gas cars, when your battery dies, in a normal situation with your 12-volt battery, they make this little thing. It's like the size of a smartphone, and it has these huge clips on it to plug it into your car battery, and it'll jumpstart your traditional engine car battery.
It's all capacitors. Yeah, but those are only good for like one shot.
Oh, it's still fascinating to me because it's so compact. Like, I want one.
Yeah, it's great. But let me touch on what you were talking about with the suitcase battery. How heavy is that thing?
Great question. It's on wheels. It's a suitcase on wheels. It's probably quite heavy.
It's probably 100 freaking pounds.
Yeah, wouldn't doubt it, right? Because that's a great point you bring up. Because if your whole car,
I'm a pretty strong guy, and 100 pounds is very awkward to move around. My wife certainly couldn't do it.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Maybe if let's say you have an EV and you've got one of these dying batteries in your EV that randomly shuts off at random, you'll have to carry one around in your trunk and lift it out of your trunk in order to use it. Yeah, or just have a tow truck driver bring you one.
I'm just wondering what the weight is on that. Batteries are super heavy. But here's another thing I want to touch on is why are the panels on electric cars not photovoltaic? Why is the roof and the hood and all the panels in the trunk, why are they not basically solar panels?
Great question. Henrik Fisker pioneered that back around 2011 or so with the original Fisker Karma. The roof was a solar panel. It was an incredible idea. I'll give you two answers. I think number one, it's just massively expensive to implement that. When these car companies are cutting any possible pennies they can, and they're getting rid of knobs and switches in order to save a half a penny. So number one, price to implement. Number two, repairability must be a nightmare to repair. And number three, as you might know, these solar panels aren't that efficient. They don't give you that much power. They don't harvest that much power.
Yeah, but I feel like at least if you're driving, maybe you could get 5-10% on an hours long drive. I feel like I didn't know Fisker did that, so that I'm very impressed with that because I have heard of Fisker, but I don't know much about them. But
yeah, it's I just watched a YouTube video about him the other day. I want to say it might be The Drive. It was something like that where they lambasted the guy because he was a beautiful designer. He designed the Z8. He designed the recent Aston Martins. But as businessman, he was horrible. He came up with all this gimmickry, and the most recent iteration of the Fisker company, I actually bought a little bit of stock in, and it completely tanked. We lost everything, totally bankrupt at the end of last year because the cars were just, they just didn't function. There were so many software issues, as I like to gloat about, that the whole thing fell apart. And now we've got a couple thousand of these cars rolling around, and they don't have any software support, so they're all falling apart.
Did Fisker make the Ocean? Was that them?
That's the one the most recent one that fell apart. He should just have a business person do the business side, and he should make the beautiful cars.
You know what car I love that I think is beautiful is the Lucid Air.
Correct. There's a couple of them floating around. There's one or two of them floating around my town, and they are beautiful.
That's a sexy car, bro.
Yeah, I had one share of Lucid and Rivian, and I just sold both of those recently. I might buy them back someday. Yeah. And you know what? Great point, too, because if Tesla is still quote-unquote struggling and their future is still somewhat uncertain, then imagine Lucid, which is a lot smaller.
But Tesla would probably buy out Lucid, right?
That would be cool. Honestly, I would like to see Lucid and Rivian join forces, something like that. A couple little guys becoming a little bit bigger so they have some stability.
I knew a guy that had a Rivian, man. He got rid of it after 2 months. He said it was a pile of
He got Rivian of it. Final thoughts, Cousin Joey.
Final thoughts, Cousin Joey. You want me to have final thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
The car industry as a whole, I don't think is doing the right thing by customers. Everything's gotten really cheap. Car companies know now that they can charge tons of money for parts because, for instance, rodents, right? Rodents love wires because the wires are soy-based. They have a soy-based sheathing, and they're like ice cream for mice. So the mice eat the sheathing off wires in cars. And you know what happens when two raw wires touch each other? They short out and cause a freaking. Well, everyone's like, well, why don't the car companies make mice-resistant wires? And it's like, because that's not in their best interest. They sell tons and tons of parts because of that, And the whole industry is like that. They sell garbage now. Everything is plastic. The engine is like 70% plastic. It's really disappointing. The best car right now, if I could go out and buy a car, I'd probably buy a 2002 F-150.
Yeah, look at my 2004 Sebring, the one you've seen so many times. It's never given me a problem. It's stupid simple to fix. And we should all just drive early 2000s cars because they were comfortable and sort of made with a little bit of care. And it's honestly, Joey, so a couple things. My buddy Steve, the anecdotal engineer, told me a couple weeks ago that he said, Mark, we're still at the tail end of the chip shortage from COVID. So they are applying those chips, whatever chips they can get, they're applying those to the more profitable vehicles. He said he was looking at a Lexus and they wouldn't sell him the low-end model. They would only sell him the high-end. And the other thing is, look, I love the idea of recyclable, sustainable stuff, especially all these electronics that are designed to only be thrown away after a year. But look, use the soy wires everywhere else in the world, not with cars, right? You know more than I do what a nightmare it is to rewire a car.
Yeah, you're better off just getting a new harness. I mean, there's so many wires now that rewiring is, and then you have to have like proprietary software to get into the car to reset everything.
Evil.
The Stealership is killing it, man. They're up to $200 an hour.
Did you say Stealership?
The Stealership guy.
All right, Joey, do you think eventually the industry or the world at large will come to its senses and give up on this ultra oversaturation? I mean, eventually, when I go to the grocery store and I come back home and I want to take all 5-6 bags and hold them all in my arms at the same time, and eventually stuff starts falling out, right? When will this world realize that this increasing number of ultra-complex parts is unsustainable? When will we go back to the 2002 Ford Rangers?
I don't think it will ever happen. And what I think is really going to happen is kids that are 5-6 years old today, I don't think they're ever going to need a driver's license.
Yeah, and that's a whole thing. I might have said this, but I saw this YouTube video the other day that talked about how autonomous cars are going to make our cities even worse, just like the highways did. And there's going to be no pedestrian traffic at all, and all these cars are going to smash into each other, and so on. I really hope it doesn't come true. I hope that all of this stuff just fizzles out.
Well, if you are a gasoline aficionado, or even just a person that likes to drive cars on your own and not have the computer do it, I feel like the society is going to look down on you. They're going to do that shame game thing like they do with people. The celebrities will get involved and they'll shame you and all this BS.
Good point. They'll utilize.
That's where I think we're going. I think that the personal freedoms that we love and enjoy and hold dear that are given to us by God, I think are going to be completely stripped from us.
I think they'll utilize the celebrities to try to shame us. You're absolutely right. But you know what? I see a lot of hope. There's plenty of YouTubers and plenty of people I'm talking to on Reddit, plenty of people who actually get it. And you know what we have going for us is the fact that people like us are the ones designing products, and we're in the industry, and we'll have the final say.
I really love your optimism. I wish I could share it.
Yeah, well, Cousin Joey, thanks so much for coming back on the show, and you're the best, and we will talk to you soon. TheComputerExorcist.com to find out more.
All right, peace out.